Once again, seeing this photo again makes me remember my time talking about the American Revolution. That was a few years ago, or maybe it was a few months ago. Time flies by so quick that I forget a lot. But today we're going to be talking about APUS history. And in this case, we'll be talking about certain parts of Unit 3. Well, and this is a special case for US history videos I'll be making now. Unlike the other US history videos, where I go ahead and talk about parts of that unit based on this EMSCO book, I would go ahead, this time though, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the entirety of Unit 3. At least try to. Then I'll see how this works and if this takes too long or something like that. Alright, so Unit 3. We start off. This Unit 3, let me give you a little context about it. First of all, in Unit 2, we learned about how you go ahead and make a colony from the British. And then the British tried and succeeded in making several colonies. Then they also succeeded in pissing off those colonists. And, well, you can imagine how much they're feeling right now. First of all, before the war, obviously, you could really imagine how this war was going to all work out. There was this American Revolution, everything, yeah, and everything became the 4th of July. Everyone will thought the 2nd day of July 1776 will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. Yeah, King George III was obviously not too happy. And then the Americans really did not want war because, their military force is the British, so they would definitely not want to fight the person who was defending them from all the other colonists. And as a result, they decided that they wanted to do something about it. So before they actually got to war and decided to formally go to war, they tried to one last stance of not going to war, where they went ahead and sent a letter to King George III. Inside, detailing all about the intolerable acts that he was doing, all those, the Stamp Act, the classic Stamp Act, the Tea Act, the Glass Act, that sort of thing. And then, well, these intolerable acts where they went ahead and went it up and created the Boston Tea Party, where a bunch of Americans dressed up as Indians threw a bunch of tea in the harbor down below. And, well, to this day, the tea's still probably there, but it's probably washed away, and it's definitely not drinkable. The harbor, though, is not tea flavored, at least not that I know of it. And, well, yeah, the harbor was closed for obvious reasons by the British, but then the destruction of the tea at the Boston harbor became known as the Boston Tea Party. And before they wanted to go ahead and actually go to war, they sent that letter I was talking about earlier to, King George III. Oh, what's this? A letter from the colonists? Asking me to be tolerable of them? Tolerable of them? I literally went ahead and funded their entire military campaign to save them. No, bye-bye. Bye-bye. It didn't work. Okay, then let's go ahead and do something about this. And as a result, they went ahead and went to war. Here's a really handy good map about the war. And, yeah. Let me tell you about the American Revolution, a little bit about it. So the American Revolution itself is more of a, hey, this is probably not going to work, that kind of thing. This is probably one of our suicide missions, that sort of thing. And no one really expected the Americans to actually win this because the British had the largest navy in the world, whereas they even had a superior army compared to these Americans. I mean, if you can already see that these are the ones who are capable of fighting, but they're few. But one of the things about that they didn't know about is the terrain. The Americans knew the terrain better than foreign British people. And in fact, the Americans even developed an entirely different culture than the British people as well, too. And so they knew their terrain a little bit better. They decided to make their capital Pennsylvania. Well, originally it was supposed to be somewhere above. I believe it used to be New York or something, but then they changed it to Pennsylvania. And, well, so many battles were fought. There was one battle at Yorktown. There was the battle at, Monmouth Courthouse. We have Bunker Hill, one of the famous ones. We had the Battle of Saratoga, again, another famous one. We had the Battle of Cowpens and other things as well, too. Here's a good map about this. Now, how were the Americans going to win this war? They were inexperienced. Well, first of all, the British just finished fighting the French, and the French really wanted to kick Britain in their butt. So, what they did was the French were all like, hey, Americans, let me help you fight the British. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? And secondly, they had guerrilla tactics, and they knew the land better. So, they definitely knew what they were doing. And thirdly, we had George Washington, the greatest military commander of all time, at least in American history. He was one of the greatest commanders of all time. What did we do next? Well, next up, the Americans The Americans were one single unit, like they are one single army of one single nationality, whereas the British are like, I'm not sending British soldiers over there. Hey, Germans, I'll pay you to fight this war for me as well too. Dutch, come here to fight this war with me too. Could you? Yeah. And obviously they didn't even speak the same language sometimes, so there was lots of miscommunication and boom ba ya ya. The Americans won the war. The French, though, they're all like, oh no, we just put ourselves in bankruptcy. And as a result, you know what happened. The French themselves had their own civil war. I would call it the French Revolution, but it's more of a civil war between like the elite and the aristocracy and the peasants, which outnumbered the elite by like a lot, if should I remind you. But this is American history, not French history. So, yeah, George Washington became one of the greatest men of all time. And now that the war was over, they needed to do something about it. So guess what? They did another Continental Congress. And there, they decided that they needed to elect some things. They did have a constitution ready and all. Yeah, sure, but during the war, they had George Washington lead them, so everyone was like, hey, George Washington, could you want to be president? Let the people vote. And then the people voted George Washington, like, unanimously. To this day, he is the only one who has 100% of all the electoral college votes, 100% of the popular vote. Everyone wanted George Washington. Everyone. It was unanimous. And George Washington was like, okay, fine. I'll do it. And then after a term of 4 years, when he was supposed to leave the office, he is elected again. And he's like, yeah, this is great. I'll try to run again, alright? And then he was elected again for a second term. So he had a total of 8 years. And then when he was asked to be president for life, he was like, hell no, we're not British, we're not French, we're not European, we're Americans. We Americans have democracy, and this is the American way. No life sentences at all. I don't want to be a king, I want to be a president. So what could I tell you, sir? You're honorable president or something like that? No, just call me Mr. President, which nowadays is one of the most, one of the biggest titles ever, like Mr. President! That kind of stuff. And it's become a staple of American culture as well, too. They created the Federalist Papers, of course, in favor of the new Constitution, and then everyone agreed to, 9 out of the 13 states were able to go ahead and ratify the Constitution, and it worked out. Oh, well. And, after that, John Adams, I believe it was John Adams, became the next president of the United States. And after John Adams became the president of the United States, he, decided to go ahead and create something for George Washington. Something I do want to mention about George Washington, though, is that he created this speech. It's called a speech, but he actually just, sent it to the newspaper, and then the newspaper was all like, hey, yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome and all. This is the new country and everything. But one thing I do want to mention, Joe, is that we don't want to make political factions. We don't want to go ahead and make people go away and stay neutral in foreign affairs. If you go to Europe, then you will go ahead and create war for us. We are not ready for war at all, and we should remain a neutral nation. It's their country's problem, not us. Oh, and the French somehow deal them off. Could you? Yeah, thanks. That part about political parties, though, is already long gone because political parties have already formed. He was like, I don't want a party, but if it was Federalist or Democratic Republican, I ain't going to have to choose Federalist. Yeah, it's awesome. And that's all about it. So that's Unit 3 in a nutshell, in 8 minutes and 50 seconds, and I hope to see you guys soon. Until next time, Shihana, peace, bye-bye.